Marcus Wellington lived alone in a giant, shiny house on a hill. It had 8 bathrooms, golden doorknobs, and a swimming pool shaped like a piano. But even with all those fancy things, Marcus felt something missing. He was lonely. People smiled at him because he was rich, but he didn't trust anyone. Not after his brother stole from him. Not after a friend tricked him. Now he only trusted himself. Lately he'd been watching his maid, Joan Brooks. Joan was kind and quiet and always wore the same brown coat and green scarf. She cooked, cleaned, folded clothes, and never complained. But Marcus had started to notice something strange. She was leaving the house early. She whispered on the phone when she thought no one was looking. Sometimes her hands shook while she wiped the table. And she always sent part of her money to places he didn't recognize, one to a hospital, one to a money store, and one to a house in a poor part of the city. One evening, as the sky turned gray with rain clouds, Marcus stood by the window and watched Joan take out the trash. She looked around nervously, checked her phone, and hurried out the gate. He narrowed his eyes. Something didn't feel right. That was the 3rd time she had acted like that. He stayed awake late that night, staring at the ceiling. Maybe Joan was hiding something. Maybe she was stealing. He had seen it happen before. He didn't want to be fooled again. The next morning, he told his driver, Daryl, to take the day off. "I'll drive myself," he said, brushing imaginary lint off his suit. Daryl looked surprised, but didn't ask questions. At 4:02 p.m., just like the day before, Joan put on her coat and left the house. Marcus waited 2 minutes, then followed in his black car. He stayed far behind so she wouldn't see him. The rain had started again, tapping gently on the windshield. Joan walked to the corner, got on the number 42 bus, and headed downtown. Marcus followed, keeping his distance, wondering what secret she was hiding. After 20 minutes, the bus stopped near Jackson Avenue. Joan got off and walked quickly through puddles and broken sidewalks until she reached a small brick building with a faded sign that read, "Welcome Hands Community Center." Marcus parked his car across the street. He watched her disappear inside. The building looked old and tired. Paint was peeling. The door creaked. A few people waited outside, an old man leaning on a cane, a woman with a baby, a teenager wearing a backpack with one strap torn. Marcus stepped out of the car, pulled his hat low, and crossed the street. He stood quietly by the window and peeked in. Joan was standing at a whiteboard, smiling, with a group of older women and men sitting on plastic chairs. She pointed to some words on the board. They were learning English. "How are you today?" she said. The students, their voices slow and careful, repeated, "How are you today?" Joan clapped her hands. "Good. Very good, Mrs. Carlton. Nice job, Mr. Pierre." Marcus blinked. His mouth fell open a little. He moved to another window. In a different room, Joan was handing out brown paper bags with sandwiches and water bottles. She bent down to hug a small boy who looked about 10. The boy laughed, held the bag close, and ran off to sit with a girl in the corner. Marcus stepped back, heart pounding. He hadn't expected this. He had followed her, thinking he'd catch her stealing or lying. But here she was, smiling, teaching, helping. She looked so full of life. He had never seen that side of her. Just then, a tall man stepped out of the building and saw Marcus standing there. "Can I help you?" the man asked kindly. He was older, with a gray beard and a gentle voice. Marcus cleared his throat. "Just looking. You need food or a class? You can come in. No one's turned away here." Marcus shook his head. "No, thank you. I'm Mr. Alvarez. I run the center. We do what we can. Mostly volunteers. We barely scrape by, but we're family here." Marcus stared at the man. "Joan works here." "Joan Brooks?" Mr. Alvarez smiled. "She's one of our angels. She works hard, then comes here to teach and help every day. Even pays for some of the food out of her own pocket." Marcus didn't know what to say. He nodded and walked away slowly, the rain now heavier. He didn't go home right away. He sat in his car, staring out the window at the community center. His hands rested on the steering wheel, but his mind was far away. He had been wrong. So wrong. That night, he sat at his desk in the big, quiet house. The rooms around him were spotless. The chandeliers sparkled. But none of it mattered. All he could think about was Joan's smile and the boy hugging his food like it was treasure. He opened his laptop and typed, "How to donate anonymously to Welcome Hands Community Center." His fingers paused over the keys. Then he gave $20,000. Enough to fix the broken windows, buy better chairs, get books, and stock the pantry with good food. Then he made another call. "Hello," he said. This is Marcus Wellington. I want to pay for a patient's hospital bill. Her name is Gloria Brooks. The nurse on the phone gasped. Are you sure, sir? That's a lot of money. I'm sure, Marcus said quietly. The next morning, Joan came in smiling a little brighter. Her mother had called her crying, saying someone had paid her bill. A miracle, her mother had said over the phone. Later that week, Mr. Alvarez told everyone the center had received a mysterious donation. We can finally fix the heater, he said joyfully. No more cold nights in class. Joan didn't know who had helped her. She didn't even wonder much. She simply prayed that night, thanking the kind stranger. Marcus didn't say a word. He acted the same as always, sipping tea, reading the paper, answering calls. But deep inside, something had shifted. For the first time in a long while, he felt warm, not from money or gold, but from something better. Hope. And he knew, without a doubt, that Joan Brooks was not a thief. She was a light. And he had almost missed it. The next few weeks passed quietly. Joan continued to clean and cook in Marcus's grand house just like always. She smiled when she dusted the shelves and hummed softly while folding laundry. But Marcus watched her differently now. He noticed the small things. How she always made sure the windows were open just enough for fresh air. How she pressed the corners of his napkins so they were perfectly folded. How she always looked tired in the morning but still showed up early with a smile. What Joan didn't know was that Marcus had kept watching her, but not the way he did before. He had driven back to the community center many times, always from a distance. He saw the old men learning how to read street signs, the mothers laughing during English classes, and the children running with warm meals in their hands. He never went inside. He didn't want to be noticed. He just wanted to see Joan be Joan. One rainy evening, Marcus stayed in his car across the street again, windows fogging up. He saw Joan inside helping Mrs. Carlton pronounce the word family. The old woman giggled after getting it right. Joan clapped her hands and gave her a hug. Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen. He hadn't felt this way in years. He started doing more things in secret. He bought new computers for the classroom. He had boxes of winter jackets sent to the center's doorstep with no return name. He made sure Joan's mother, Mama Gloria, had groceries delivered each week, plus a new heater for the cold nights. He even paid for Tyrell's school fees, Joan's teenage nephew, after overhearing her crying softly in the hallway one evening. She thought no one heard her. Joan was puzzled. The community center had never had this much help. Mr. Alvarez scratched his head every time something new arrived. God is good, he'd say. We've got a secret angel. Joan would smile, then look down. She thought maybe someone from church was helping. Or maybe it was the mayor. She never imagined it was the man whose floors she mopped every morning. Back at the mansion, Marcus found himself changing in ways he didn't expect. He began getting up earlier. He'd sit at the table waiting for Joan to pour him tea just so he could ask, "How are you today, Joan?" It had never mattered before. Now it did. Sometimes she would smile shyly and say, "I'm good, sir. Thank you." Other times she looked away like she didn't believe someone like him truly cared. But Marcus kept asking, kept watching. And slowly Joan started to open up. She told him small things. That her mom used to be a nurse before she got sick. That Tyrell loved books and wanted to become a teacher. That she dreamed of going back to college someday, but there was never enough money. Marcus listened carefully. He didn't say much, but he took every word to heart. One evening, after she had gone home, he stood in the kitchen, looking at the plate of leftover cornbread she made. He thought about how she gave so much to others but never asked for anything. She reminded him of someone. His mother. Before the money. Before everything changed. The next day, he called his lawyer and made a quiet plan. If anything ever happened to him, a large part of his money would go to a new foundation, the Morales Wellington Fund. A place that would support community centers just like Welcome Hands. He also had a letter written and sealed in a drawer. It said everything he wanted Joan to know, who he had been, what he had done, and how much she had changed his life. But he never gave it to her. Because something else happened first. It was a Saturday morning, bright and cool. Joan had asked for the day off to attend a special event at the community center, a small gala to thank the volunteers and supporters. She had no idea Marcus already knew all about it. In fact, Mr. Alvarez had even sent Marcus a secret invitation. He debated whether to go. For hours, he paced his study, holding the invitation in one hand and staring out at the hills. He had never liked parties. And he wasn't ready to show Joan what he'd done. But then he thought, what if she never knows? What if she thinks no one sees her light? So he put on a simple gray suit, no tie, and drove himself there. The room inside the center was glowing with tiny string lights and warm music. Folding chairs had been decorated with purple ribbons. Children danced near the snacks. Old women wore bright scarves and wide smiles. And Joan stood near the podium helping Mr. Alvarez pass out plates. She hadn't seen him yet. Marcus stood in the back quietly, his hands in his pockets. His heart thudded in his chest like a drum. Mr. Alvarez took the microphone and cleared his throat. Before we begin, he said, we want to thank our mysterious donor, the one who gave us enough to keep this place alive. We don't know who you are, but if you're here tonight, we hope you'll let us thank you in person. Whispers filled the room. Marcus stepped forward slowly. Joan turned and froze. Their eyes met. He walked to the front and took the mic. It was me, he said softly. I didn't mean to keep it a secret forever, but I had to see it all for myself first. Joan's hands covered her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked like her knees might buckle. Marcus continued, his voice shaking a little. I followed you, Joan. Weeks ago. I thought you were hiding something. I didn't trust you. And I was wrong. What I saw changed me. He turned to the crowd. What you all do here, this community, this love, this hope, this is what matters. I spent years building towers with glass windows, but I've never seen anything shine the way this place does. He looked back at Joan. You reminded me what real goodness looks like. You showed me what strength really is. Joan stepped forward, still speechless. She placed a hand gently on his arm. Marcus, she whispered. Why me? He smiled, not the cold kind she used to see, but a warm human one. Because when I saw you giving everything, even when you had almost nothing, I realized you were the richest person I knew. The room clapped. Children cheered. Someone wiped tears with a napkin. Joan pulled him aside gently. There's something I never said, she whispered. I thought someone like you could never see someone like me. A maid. From the south side. A black woman with second-hand shoes. Marcus took her hand. Then I guess we were both wrong about each other. And for the first time, she didn't pull her hand away. They stood there, two people from different worlds, smiling through tears. And something new began to bloom. Not just friendship, but something deeper. Something real. After the night of the gala, everything felt different. Marcus and Joan still saw each other every day, but now their words felt warmer, their eyes held longer, and the silence between them felt gentle, not awkward. Joan didn't call him sir as much anymore, and Marcus no longer hid behind fancy suits or short replies. He had opened a door in his heart, and somehow Joan had walked through it without even trying. They began to talk more real talks. They talked about their families, their fears, and the dreams they thought were too big to say out loud. Marcus told Joan about his mother who passed away before he became rich. She used to make fried plantains and sing songs while washing dishes, just like Joan. And Joan told Marcus about the time she got accepted into college but couldn't afford to go. She gave the money to help raise her baby cousin after his mom disappeared. One afternoon, Marcus stood on his balcony watching the sun melt into the hills. He thought about how long he had lived in this house, how quiet it had been, how much he had lost by thinking only about money and deals. Now, the same house felt alive just because one person had shown him kindness was still real. The next morning, he called Joan into his office. She walked in holding a feather duster and wearing her usual calm smile. I have a question, Marcus said, standing beside his desk. Would you like to stop working here as my maid? Joan blinked, surprised. Did I do something wrong? No, he said quickly. Not at all. I just mean, I want to offer you something better. He walked over to a folder and opened it. Inside were papers, job details, salary numbers, and a new badge that said Community Director, Morales Wellington Foundation. I started this to support centers like Welcome Hands, he said. I want you to run it. Help more people. Let it your way. Joan stared at the folder. She was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up. Marcus. It's everything I've ever dreamed of. He smiled. Then say yes. But she gently closed the folder. I can't. His face dropped. Why? She spoke softly, like she was telling a secret. Because I need to do this my way. I want to finish school. I want to earn my degree. I want to help people, but not as someone who was handed power. I want to build it, brick by brick, just like you did. Marcus was quiet. First he felt hurt, but then he understood. This was why he had admired her in the first place. She didn't take shortcuts. She built things from the ground up with love, not money. He nodded slowly. Okay. but I'll still be here, supporting you however I can." Joan smiled. That's all I could ask for. Days turned to weeks. Joan enrolled in night classes at a local college, still volunteering at the center. Marcus helped from behind the scenes, but never told anyone. He just kept giving quietly. He stopped buying golden clocks and instead bought food, books, and medicine for families who needed them. One crisp winter evening, Joan invited Marcus to Mama Gloria's house for dinner. It was a small home with cracked tiles and wobbly chairs, but it smelled like home. There was laughter, music, and the warm sound of Tyrell reading a poem he had written. Joan stood in the kitchen frying chicken, humming a tune, wearing a bright apron with sunflowers on it. Marcus looked around the room and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the kids had gone to bed, Marcus and Joan sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching stars blink above the rooftops. Joan turned to him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," Marcus said. "I used to wish on stars when I was little. I always asked for the same thing. A quiet life, a chance to help people, and someone who really saw me." Marcus swallowed softly. "And now," she leaned her head on his shoulder. "Now I don't have to wish." He wrapped an arm around her, slow and gentle. The night was still. A dog barked in the distance. A baby cried 2 houses away. But between them, everything was peaceful. Months passed. Joan finished her first semester at college with top grades. The community center had doubled its food program. Mama Gloria's health was stable. Tyrell had started writing articles for a school newsletter. And Marcus, he wasn't just a millionaire anymore. He was a man with purpose. Then came a big surprise. Welcome Hands planned a second gala, bigger than the last. But this time, Joan was the guest of honor. She had been named Local Hero of the Year by the city. The center was packed with lights, music, and people from every corner of the neighborhood. Joan wore a beautiful purple dress, her curls pinned with gold clips. Marcus arrived in a plain navy suit, no flash, just warmth in his eyes. Mr. Alvarez took the stage. "Tonight," he said proudly, "we honor a woman who reminds us that the smallest acts of kindness can change the biggest hearts." As the crowd cheered, Joan stepped up to speak. She looked nervous at first, then found Marcus in the crowd and smiled. "I never thought I'd be here," she began. "I never thought someone like me would be called a hero. I've made beds and mopped floors, and for a long time, I believed that's all the world would ever let me do." She paused. But then someone unexpected saw me. Not for what I wore, not for where I came from, but for what I cared about. He changed my life, not with money, but with trust. And now I stand here not alone, but with all of you. The crowd stood clapping. Some wiped away tears. Joan stepped off the stage, and as she passed Marcus, she whispered, "Ready for our next chapter?" He nodded. More than ready. A few months later, they were married in a small ceremony at the center, surrounded by families they had helped, friends they had made, and children who had once gone to bed hungry but now danced with full bellies. Joan wore white. Marcus cried. Tyrell gave a speech. Mama Gloria held a flower bouquet and beamed like sunshine. They didn't have golden chairs or ice sculptures. But they had love. They had a dream. And together, they built the Morales Wellington Foundation, a new kind of empire. One made of kindness, brick by brick, heart by heart. In the end, Marcus learned that the greatest fortune wasn't in his bank. It was in choosing trust over fear, love over suspicion, and seeing finally that the brightest light had been right in front of him all along.